What I'm saying is, wait, are we starting?
Yeah, just start. Just say it.
All right. I was just going to say, why don't we just deal with this topic, and then you can do Science Corner, and that'll be the show.
No, because we got all this other stuff that's fun to talk about.
All right.
But the deal is, all right, it's folk knowledge that pops up all the time that a president who's in trouble will wag the dog. Coming from the idea the phrase, the tail wags the dog. That you do something over here to distract from something over here. Trump's getting impeached, so of course he's going to blow up a guy. And then people will put up on Twitter lists of presidents who've been in trouble. Clinton blew up Kosovo when Clinton was getting impeached, and Reagan did this, and Bush did this, and you can make a list of presidents in trouble who've done something with regard to foreign enemies. But the alternative view is that, well, Soleimani needed to get blown up. And people need to get blown up throughout presidents' administrations, and sometimes the blowing up coincides with a president in trouble. And sure, you can make the argument, that he's getting impeached. Of course, he's going to blow up a guy. But, Trump is a guy, I have to admit, who'd blow up a guy even if he weren't getting impeached. So do we have to have a fight about this?
I'm glad you realized that, because to me, when I read these things that's when I realize that most Democrats are idiots when they say things like that.
But all right, most people in general are idiots. So.
Like there's two.
We're idiots.
There's two ways. There's two ways to find out if someone's an idiot, and it's how credulous they are. Like, okay, I didn't think that Clinton attacked Kosovo because he was being impeached. Even though I was ambivalent about Clinton, I didn't hate him, I didn't love him, I just thought, exactly what Rick said.
Well, you weren't woke yet in your conservative way. You didn't get woke until 9/11.
I voted for Bill Clinton.
Yeah.
Yeah. So my point is that I think that foreign policy things happen and they coincide with what presidents are doing, and I don't believe that anybody would use the military and actually cause deaths in order to distract people. Maybe they would do that. Maybe Hitler would do that, but I don't think someone from our society would do that. And also, everything Rick said. But I just wanted to say, now this is going to hurt a lot of people's feelings, but the way that I can tell if someone is, let's say, badly informed, let's not say stupid, let's just say badly informed, is if they say, the World Trade Center, I have a feeling that maybe there was an inside job there. It's too convenient that we could invade the Middle East and take over the oil. I think there were some Americans that knew about it. Maybe we did it to ourselves. That's the first one. The second one is, Trump, he's just doing this because he doesn't want people focusing on impeachment. He'll probably start a war. There's a lot of people on the Facebook talking like that. I just think dumb person 1, dumb person 2, dumb person 3. Anyway, go ahead.
Well, with regard to the World Trade Center, the cliche thing that people say, like when you want to make a joke about people believing weird shit about is they say jet fuel can't melt steel beams. Oh. You've heard that a million times.
Yeah, I've heard that.
All right, so every time I hear that, I want to go look up the whole deal about jet fuel and steel beams, and then by the time I get to the computer, I'm like, I don't really care. It seems like bullshit to me. I do have a thing about the World Trade Center,
okay.
And it's not a conspiracy. It's that those were some badly designed buildings.
Why is that?
Because they had 3 fucking stairwells where they should have had 6. In one of the buildings, the buildings were 200 feet wide. The stairwells were clustered 50 feet from each other. because the buildings were designed to have big open spaces. So you could have your whole fucking trading floor if you were a stock trading company, without walls to get in the way of the flow of information and shit. And the World Trade Center had an external skeleton, which is crazy. Modern skyscrapers have what they call curtain walls. A curtain wall is the structure is supported by beams on the inside. Girders. You've seen it when a building's under construction. You put up the building, then you hang the windows on the front. The windows don't support anything. The World Trade had these corrugated steel beams that ran all the way up that were ornamental, but also provided a bunch of support.
Okay.
When a building gets cut in half by a plane, that's a terrible fucking thing, because I don't know what would have happened if you had a traditional building where a plane flew into it, but if you've got an external support, if everything's on the support's on the outside, then a floor collapses on the inside, and then it collapses into the next floor. Now you've got 3 times the weight of floor. There's no way to hold up. Nothing's going to stop the collapsing. It's going to be contained within the external skeleton, which is going to be destroyed, of course, but it's just going to kind of unwind and go move straight down. Whereas maybe a traditional skyscraper would tilt over and smash the building next to it, but maybe like the building under the strike, say, maybe the top 30 floors fall off to the side and 80 stories below, survive to the point where people can make it. Anyway, those things fucking pancaked. There was no way out, because when the planes cut the buildings, they knocked out all the stairwells, where if there were 6 of them and some of them were along the perimeter of the building, there may have been a surviving stairwell.
I see.
And it was because of a loophole in the zoning laws based on who owned the property.
Huh.
And that part is frustrating.
Okay.
But anyway, so we were talking about, now one thing I heard or saw a tweet about without reading the actual article, because you think the New York, and this will lead us right to the next topic, which is bias in the media. The New York Times published an article based on inside sources in the White House saying that when Trump, with regard to Iran, Trump was presented with a bunch of ideas, and apparently the people presenting him with ideas like to present him with one fucking wild, ridiculous, just obviously undoable idea to make the rest of to make him pick something from the reasonable ideas.
Okay.
And according to this article, the wild idea was blowing up Soleimani, and that everybody presenting him with ideas was like appalled when he picked that idea. And my response to that is, well, all right, that sounds possible. But on the other hand, if you have a president who picks wild ideas, don't give him that idea to do if you don't want him to do it, because he might pick it.
I'm going to tell you 2 stories about history, because I know history. When you were a member of the British Empire, which was the largest empire in history, if a British citizen was killed anywhere on Earth, the British military or navy would come after you. So British citizens walked like kings wherever they were, in Africa, in Asia, and so people in previous eras understood that you didn't let countries fuck with you. If your citizens were killed, you fought them. That was war. And if you didn't fight them, then you were a punk. Then on the world stage, your country would get gobbled up. That's why, if you look through history, there are many, many examples of tiny little countries. Like, for example, Denmark fought the Austrian Empire and Germany at the same time. Why? Because you don't let your country get fucked with. Paraguay fought the 3 largest countries in South America when Paraguay was one of the smallest. They fought Brazil, Chile, and Argentina. Why? Because you defend your country. If you're fucked with, you have to fight. Now, what has happened is, through a series of weak and dithering Democrat leaders, the United States has gotten into a habit of letting other countries fuck with us. And so, from a historical standpoint, I would never have tolerated any of this. I think we've had reasons to go to war with Iran for 40 years. Ever since they attacked our embassy, we could have been fighting them. Modern people have to get used to the idea that if you don't defend your country, you will be overrun by enemies.
Well, let's talk about this, because you were talking about weak and dithering Democratic presidents.
Yes.
Reagan made a deal with them to get the hostages free. He said, "We'll sell you arms through back channels if you just wait until Carter's done being president."
That's a bit of a...
Yeah, I know it's
okay,
not...
there's another side to that. I didn't vote for Reagan, and I don't know... Okay. The goal of Reagan was to arm the Nicaraguan freedom fighters against their evil communist dictatorship. And the Congress wouldn't give them the money.
And the money had to come from somewhere.
So they thought they could get it from the Ayatollah. There are those who say that the reason that the hostages were released is because Reagan groveled. I think it's more likely that the hostages were released because the Ayatollah knew that Reagan would attack Iran. That Carter was a very confused, very ineffectual and feeble president, but Reagan had made it clear that he was willing to go to war.
But he also made a deal with them.
Well, he made a deal with them afterwards. The arms for hostages deal was...
It's right in the name.
No, it was after, they call it that. That happened months and months, a very long time.
Iran-Contra.
The hostages were released the day he took office.
Yeah, which is not it's a crazy coincidence.
Well,
It's not a coincidence.
it's a coincidence unless you think that the Ayatollah had sized up Reagan and realized that his country was going to be in war with the most powerful country on earth.
Is it the same Ayatollah that's right now?
What?
Is it the same Ayatollah?
No.
Okay.
That was Ayatollah Khomeini. This is Ayatollah Khamenei. Anyway,
all right, that's another thing that's
yeah.
fucked up about the Mideast. You've got Iraq and Iran, and they differ by one letter, and it's very easy to fucking say the wrong one.
Well, the funny thing about the Arab, well, this is not Farsi, which is the Iranian language, but both Arab and the Iranian languages don't have as many vowels, don't use vowels much. Their main vowel is ah, the sound ah, so an e. So they don't have as many sounds. You can always tell an Iranian name because it'll have it'll have AH somewhere in the name.
But the ladies are beautiful. The Iranians,
Okay, I'd like to address the issue of Iranian women being beautiful.
Yes.
Can I do that?
When they were more westernized, people like to say that Iran was one of the most westernized countries, and back in the 70s, the women there wore miniskirts.
All right, there's more to it than that.
Yeah, but still.
We have universally accepted in Los Angeles that Iranian women are gorgeous. This is universally accepted, and that Iranian men, monsters, basically. So how is this possible? And I've done some research. It turns out, don't interrupt me, that the country that has the most nose jobs in the world is Iran. So what happens is this. Iranian women have full lips, nice cheekbones, big, huge brown eyes. but they have very large noses, like a lot of Middle Eastern people.
And us. I've had a nose
And
job.
Jews. But what happened is they've gotten in the habit of just hacking off the noses of the girls. And when you get a perfect nose along with everything else on a female, suddenly they're gorgeous. So that's the secret that Westerners don't know about why Iranian women are gorgeous.
Let's also talk about the men, because you called them monsters.
Yes.
The deal is, I believe, the men from the Mediterranean region, which goes all the way up to, let's say, Armenia. There are a lot of Armenians in the valley.
I would say physically monsters. I mean,
No, but here's the deal.
I'm not-
Here's the deal.
Yeah.
You've got unibrows.
Plus, like Albuquerque,
Okay.
the more redneck a town in America, the more people stick to traditional sex roles. Like the girls are girly and the guys are manly.
Okay.
And I'd say that that's probably, at least in terms of the manliness thing, that's true for Middle Eastern countries.
Okay.
And so what happens is, in the valley, you go to a gym and you see three guys from one of those countries, possibly Armenia, working out, and they're bulky and they're stubbly. They've got like closely cut hair, and you think, oh, these guys are the guys who, if they were in their hometown of wherever, like Melania Trump's hometown, these are the guys who'd beat you up outside a disco. But then you listen to them or you meet them, they're very sweet.
Mm-hmm.
They're nice. They've taken on these, this male drag kind of thing. They're gonna be manly because it's a cultural thing, but they're pretty good guys.
Okay. Well, I mean, it's a big issue. A lot of this is one thing that people don't handle well is honest discussion of other cultures. And what they don't realize is when you're dealing with someone from South America, Hispanic people, they are actually behind Americans in the liberation of the women. So your typical South American woman is far more agreeable and cooperative and gentle. Now you may say, well, that's a good thing. What's wrong with that? Well, it's not because it's a superior culture. It's because 50 years from now or 20 years from now, when they catch up with the U.S., they'll get rebellious, competitive, aggressive, belligerent women. So that's why that's happening. That's my opinion. But see, a lot of Hispanic guys have told me this. Yes.
It's interesting that you say that, because I was thinking about that the other day, and that a lot of the folks here in Los Angeles that are advocates for immigration, like 80% of those guys are super macho and keep women down. That's just the culture, right? I don't know. It is the culture, and wife beaters and stuff, and they beat up the woman is, and it's ironic that
we should issue some kind of disclaimer here at some point. But okay.
Well, I don't know. Who are these guys that are?
It's just typical in the Latino culture. Like you just said yourself, they're like 50 years behind in terms of the women's liberation movement.
That's what I'm saying.
And yet you have,
there's nothing to deny.
and yet you
That's the way it
have
is.
folks in the liberal movement here that are advocating for these people to come over when they're bringing back in what they're trying to get rid of.
Well, I'll give you another example. This can't be disagreed on. I mean, I've actually, from an earlier show, I had to read the numbers. There are states of Mexico where the age of consent is 12, and there's one state where the age of consent is 12, and there's another state where there is no age of consent. Now, if you want to look at a way of showing that you've got your women under control, just say that, well, we can marry them when they're under 12. That is a real giveaway. In Afghanistan, in Afghanistan, for example, They have mass weddings of children under the age of 9 to 40-year-old men.
All right, can I admit something? When I read about those places, and I don't like to,
Uh-huh.
I like to think that, A, it doesn't happen much, and when it does, that it's not between some rapey monster, it's that there's some forbearance and that,
No, it's absolutely widespread. Afghanistan,
yeah, I don't
being a
like,
Muslim country, is the leader of child rape.
all right, you know what?
So they marry children. They marry children under 10. And let me tell you something.
Why, no, let's not even go into this
women
shit.
are very subservient. I'm just saying.
I get that, like the Afghan girl who was on the cover of, remember that most famous picture of cover of National Geographic?
Well, the one with the
Blue
the
eyes.
greenish blue eyes.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, they revisited her like 20 years later, and she looks like she's 110.
Yeah. But
We heard what you said. The camera heard what you
mic
said.
pick that up?
Yeah,
Okay.
so we.
Well, I guess old Lance
No, hold on,
wasn't
hold on.
being unfair.
Yeah, you were, but back in 11 years ago, I started developing a show, not very seriously, called Don't Get a Boner, and where strippers would compete to be the first one to give the person they were lap dancing a boner.
I'm getting a boner right now.
Okay. Well, anyway, so bias among journalists. A new study just came out this very fucking day. A study of 13,500 journalists that shows that while they're overwhelmingly liberal, that there's no bias in their coverage. And they did this huge study from guys from 3 conservative universities, Brigham Young and the University of like Virginia. They did this huge study and found out that even though journalists are maybe liberal, they value objectivity above all else, and they're just as likely to cover conservative-leaning subjects as they are liberal-leaning subjects. So there's that, and I can show it to you if you need to see it.
If anybody thinks that the press has handled Trump with objectivity, then you really shouldn't be watching our show. You're just not bright enough. The press, it would take years for me to go through the internet finding the thousands and thousands of articles.
Let's get the shot tighter.
I'm getting a boner. All right. This is a completely indefensible position. All you have to do is take a speech that Trump makes, go to CNN, hear what they say about it, go to Fox, hear what they say about it. I have seen CNN and NBC people lie, just flat out lie.
Well, what about fucking Fox? I mean, all right, you know.
But Fox will present the speech, and you can make up your own mind. What CNN and NBC do is they just lie about it. They'll tell you things that are demonstrably untrue. For 3 years now, Rachel Maddow, for example, has convinced Rick that Trump is a Russian asset. That's another word for spy, but when I say spy, he goes nuts. He says, no, I don't think he was a spy. I think he colluded with Russia knowingly. But he didn't collude with Russia. He's just doing what Russia wants and knows that he's doing it.
No, I think Trump likes Putin a lot.
Yeah. So anyway, Rachel Maddow has convinced Rick, and even the Mueller report found no evidence.
No, actually, it found a lot of fucking
Then why
shit.
didn't they prosecute?
Because
Why
it's
aren't they in the articles of impeachment, Rick? Why is
Let's
nothing?
not-
Wait, why didn't the Congress use the Mueller report to justify impeachment?
Well, you're not going to buy any reason I give you, but I've read that it was the conclusions of the Mueller report were sufficiently unclear and further muddied by William Barr's report on the Mueller report that people in Congress felt that they couldn't make a convincing case, and that Trump's deal with the Ukraine is much more clear. And because, I mean, let's be honest about this. We can agree that the Senate is very unlikely to, I mean, almost certainly will not kick Trump out of office, right?
Right.
Okay. So we can, just go with me here. I don't think there's anything to disagree with here. That what the House wants to do in impeaching Trump is to damage him sufficiently politically. The hopes of the Democrats in the House
Yes.
is that he doesn't get reelected, right? We can agree on that, right?
Okay.
Okay, so that's the deal.
But if if the Mueller report proved that Trump colluded with Russia, then you would have some evidence for that you could quote to us right now on the camera. You would have something, a name, a date, an action.
Yeah, I've shown you stuff, and you just like laughed. I don't want to have this fight again.
Well, it'd be easy to remember what it was. Can you repeat to us what it was that Trump did when he colluded with Russia against the United States? And it was in the Mueller report?
He said, Russia, if you have, no, I don't want to do this again. I really don't. Let's move on. Because I can't offer.
That's convenient.
That's fine, but we've had this fight. If you want to see the fight, just go back to see the.
Okay, Rick doesn't want to repeat it because he knows he has no evidence.
No, I don't want to repeat it because I don't want to have the same fight
Well,
again.
while you're telling me that, you could have given me the evidence.
How many people were convicted though in Trump's circle?
6.
Who were they?
Manafort.
Gates, Papadopoulos, Manafort,
Do you know Manafort?
Flynn.
Wait a minute. Flynn wasn't convicted.
Yeah, he was.
No, he wasn't. No, he
He's
wasn't.
just waiting. He's waiting to get his.
No, but the judge is determining whether to overturn the decision right now.
Well, so there was a decision, so he was convicted.
No. What happened was Flynn pleaded, and now his new lawyers have said that they want to reverse the plea.
Okay.
He was not convicted. Papadopoulos spent a
When
week.
you take a plea, that equals a conviction.
It was because he couldn't afford. He didn't have enough money to keep fighting the Justice Department.
All right,
the
so
Democrats were. No,
Do we need to fight about that?
Cohen?
That's fine.
Wait,
So
wait, wait.
let's
Cohen.
just say. So let's.
Trump's lawyer, Carrie Cohen.
Yeah, Cohen.
Cohen went to jail for violating policies dealing with taxi cabs, and Manafort went to jail for tax evasion.
It's all just coincidence.
Well-
all these convictable guys just ended up in the circle of.
Well, Manafort was his campaign head for about a month. Then he was replaced and went to jail for tax evasion. You're saying that makes Trump a colluder with Russia?
No, I don't want to have this fight. Really, I mean,
I wouldn't have that fight because you'd lose.
fine. Let's move on to. What are we going to?
Science corner?
Let's do science corner.
You do science
All right.
And then get the painting or talk about the painting.
No. Let's do this.
Oh,
I've spent.
all right. When do you want to insert the picture?
Once you talk about it.
Okay, I'd just like to say, I finished the painting of Bryce. It looks really good. I'm going to send a photo to our director, and he'll insert it right
It's showing right now where Rick
here.
is.
Okay.
Okay.
So you're just gonna. Now this is gonna be VO over Bryce.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
Lance is looking at Bryce right now.
Okay. No, but have it fill the screen.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. It just did.
Yeah.
Okay, fine. All right, go ahead.
What else do you
now.
want to say
You talk
about-
about science.
All right. So I've spent the weekend calculating when I'm going to die. I've reached the point where I have to pick. Now, this is I belong to the Writers Guild, and I'm one of the few people left in America who has a pension.
Ooh.
And I have to pick what flavor pension I'm going to take. And when you pick your pension, you can one thing you do is decide when you're going to start taking payments. And the later you start taking payments, the more you get per month, because the less time they're going to have to pay you until you die. So I've spent the whole week. Now, it's the Writers Guild, not the Math Guys Guild. So most people don't do the math, but I've been doing the fucking math to see when I should start taking payments. And it's almost immediately. Because if I wait, like the difference between taking a pension when I turn 60 in 4 months and taking it at 65, I'd have to live to 101 for the increased payments to catch up with the extra money I got in the 5 years if I start at 60.
Wow.
Ooh.
So, and then that was calculation 1. Then calculation 2 is how much Carol gets after I'm dead. Because there are options where I die, but she gets 0, or she gets 100%, but I get paid less now when I'm alive. And there's a 50% and a 2/3 option, all these different flavors of how much Carol gets per month once I'm dead. You can also look at the deals that I start getting more once Carol's dead, but Carol's definitely going to outlive me. She's a girl, and you know.
Couldn't you just take the extra money and get life insurance?
Life insurance in general is a bad deal, but that's one thing. You take the money up front, and then Carol's like, well, we'll just take the money and we'll put it in a separate bank account and just have it earn interest. And I'm like, it's all the same fucking money. It doesn't matter whether it's in here or there. Carol loves to think of money in different places as if it's not going to behave the same way if it's in a different account.
Okay.
But anyway, I did all these like different calculations, like
Wow. You
know,
amortized it?
yeah, like if we do the one thing, like if I live to 71, then Carol has to live to 70 to catch up. If I live to frickin' 93, Carol has to live to 98 for one flavor to.
Wow.
So anyway, it's a little bit.
That's crazy.
So I've been spending the whole time trying to figure out when I'm going to die, when Carol's going to die. It's and things are, A, that's hard enough to do. A, it's depressing. B, it's hard to do. And C, it's extra hard to do because like this one option, you know, that takes us to fucking, 87 and a half and Carol to 96 and a half. When I'm 87 and a half, it'll be 2047, 2048, and it'll be 2060 for Carol. And how can you talk about what shit is going to be going on in 2047 medically?
In the year 2047.
Yeah, like, so it's fucking hard to do. Now, I want to talk about a couple more things related to aging. And one is the Hayflick limit, which everybody should know about. The Hayflick limit is the number of reproduction cycles most of the cells in your body get. Most of your cells get 50 generations. They can reproduce 50 times before they're done. And that means that people stay pretty functional into their 70s, and then they just stop making new cells, and they just go to fucktown, shit town. Just like my mother-in-law is in a senior living community, and that place is the young olds, people my age, going to visit the old olds, people in their 80s and 90s, and it's not good times. It's a nice place, but the old olds are people whose cells have reached the Hayflick limit, and they're just not making new cells, and it's not good times.
Is this brain cells and muscle cells, all kinds of cells?
Every fucking skin cells and fucking, like some people are hanging in there, and they obviously, and they're better off than the other people, but still, it's. Come on, science. Let's give us.
They're coming up for a cure for sickle cell anemia using HIV. By the way, did you know? Or stem cells that are HIV.
Yeah, and there's a thing called CRISPR, which is a viral. You can infect organisms with designer viral payloads that insert better genes into certain places, just that fix things. I think I'm hoping for the CRISPR revolution, which is that you put the gene you want your fucked up cells to have, into this virus. The virus infects your body with this, and you get corrected genes. And I'm hoping they come up with ones to give people extra ticks on the Hayflick clock. Because if you got another 8 clicks, you might be able to look like you're in your 60s into your early 80s, maybe. I don't know. All right, the end of old age bullshit.
Just a quick question. Is it possible ever in history or in the future that they just, and we've talked to preserve the brain and put it in another body? Because it's the brain that would controls thought and memory and actions? And
they kind of think they could do a head transplant. People have talked about it, and nobody's been crazy enough to try it. People think you might be able to do a head transplant right now. But what you can't do is have a head that runs the rest of the body, because it's cutting off the head is like a huge spinal injury.
Okay.
You're going to be paralyzed, but you'll still be a head. But like there's so many competing future technologies that, I mean, I think the technology that will ultimately win in the next, say, 60, 80 years is replicating the information and function of the brain and being able to essentially move your consciousness into, biohardware, or supplement that once you are able to digitize the function of human thought, then you can put it anywhere, including fucking cheap places like a server, and that beats out everything else. That beats out having to grow kidneys in pigs. It beats out cryonic suspension, where they lower your body temperature to like 10 degrees above absolute zero and wait for science to catch up with whatever killed you. The ultimate winning technology is the digitizing of consciousness.
Last thought, and I promise this is it. And this goes to robot girlfriends.
Mm-hmm.
That the original robot girlfriend, would you say, is, we're talking about blowing up stuff, and it's the blow up doll. Whatever happened to the blow up doll?
The blow up doll, well, they
original
still sell those, but they're mostly a joke, except that some guys are still fucking them.
But
they're something that you buy at a porno store, they probably cost $30 now. They're this terrible pool floaty thing with a dick-shaped hole for the mouth and probably for the vagina, and desperate guys will bang them.
Would you say that was an original robot girlfriend prototype?
No, it's a fucking pool floaty. But yeah, I mean, it's the idea is, you're trying to have, I remember when my friends would poke a hole in a Playboy centerfold and go to town on that. Anything. I had another friend who ripped the tail off of a stuffed animal and let's talk about impeachment.
That was not me, by the way.
No.
I was a friend of Rick back then, but it wasn't me that did the tearing of the tail off the stuffed animal.
We also need to cover the Australian fires. Just
I would just like to say one thing.
Yeah, lines.
In response to this, this is kind of topical because Star Wars was just released again with the
very last one.
The ghost of Princess Leia, who was Carrie Fisher. Yeah. And so it prompted me to look at some old videos of Carrie Fisher, who was supposed to be kind of the girl next door, but she was actually sexy. She was very sexy when she was young. Not a raving beauty, but pretty hot.
She was in Shampoo.
Yeah, she was kind of cute in
which
that.
Young Warren Beatty banged everybody.
She was even more cute there are these outtakes of her running around in her slave
metal
dress.
bikini.
Yeah, the metal bikini. And she, could fill out a metal bikini with this Jabba the Hutt had captured her. Anyway, I was juxtaposing that with some interviews on YouTube of her, and she was a wreck before she died. She looked like a monster. And she was only about...
She was 60, I think.
Yeah, but she was only about 10 years older than me, 5 years older than me. And so when you compare her old age to Sylvester Stallone's old age, Sylvester Stallone is a magnificent looking specimen.
Except for, I mean, his face is too muscly.
Well,
but,
it's what it is.
But for a 70-year-old guy, he's got like.
Okay, my point is that speaks to Carrie Fisher, who was a life of absolute addiction, no exercise, drinking, drugs, every possible thing you could do to ruin your body. And you compare that to somebody else that's really taking good care of themselves.
Plus, who's probably on
Sophia Loren.
HGH.
Yeah, well, I don't know about that. I don't know about the HGH. But my point is that regardless of how depressing what Rick said is, I am heartened by the fact that really taking good care of your body, avoiding addictions, exercising, eating healthy food, I think you can squeeze some very good times into those later years, and you don't have to end up a wreck.
Well, but you still end up dead. So you don't. The deal is that there are simple things they can do to flatworms to make a flatworm live 2 or 3 or 5 times as long as most flatworms.
I think caloric restriction is
junk
important.
like that. But
Yeah.
it turns out that you can't do those things. Don't work as well on humans because we've already been pushed pretty far along the long life thing. It takes so long to educate infant humans, to bring them to adulthood, that evolution has pushed people into, as long a life as we, that they think that it's impossible without some kind of huge intervention for people to naturally live. The very longest lived people on the planet, out of billions of people, only make it into the 100 and teens. Very few people make it past 110, and maybe nobody's made it past 120.
Okay.
Compared to, if we were flatworms, some people would make it to 350. So even the most scrupulous people about taking care of themselves, Jack LaLanne, for instance, made it to 96. And he was still towing boats around Santa Monica Bay with his teeth into his 90s.
I believe I have no proof of this, but I heard he drank excessively.
I don't know. But the deal is that he was, regardless of whether he drank,
he was in great shape.
he worked out every day, and he didn't let sugar enter his body and all this shit. And it bought him another, say, 15, 20 years.
Yeah.
Which is nice, but is not another 100 years.
Right. Okay.
Do you drink? Len? You don't drink.
I don't drink.
Or smoke?
No.
How about you, Rick? No.
No. I worked in bars that were in the smoky era, where the air was blue, and when you left, you would have this shit you had to shower off, which was just like a film made of spilled beer and cigarette smoke. So that's probably worth about 4 months, as if I was a chain smoker for 4 months, if you add us just the secondhand.
Speaking of smoke, there's a lot of smoke in Australia right now.
All right, sure. So the huge brush fires in Australia, which have killed, they say, 500 million animals.
Oh.
And so it's summer in Australia. And temperatures, the average temperature due to climate change is 2.7 degrees Fahrenheit warmer than 50 years ago. And people who believe in climate change, which should be anybody reasonable, are saying, well, this is just one of the things where you might have wildfires in Australia, but the crazy extent of these fucking things is just one more thing that's been exacerbated by climate change. And I read how, and some of the reasons are, well, the shit that burns is X amount drier because it's that much hotter. And, when you have hurricanes out in the ocean, it's because they're this much more frequent or powerful because the ocean's this much warmer. So I think that climate change has been undeniable for a while, and is becoming increasingly so the more of the shit that goes on.
Okay, I don't know anything about the fires in Australia, so I'm not going to comment.
All right, but there'd be like thousands of cooked koala bears, which
Okay.
nobody wants that.
All right. Is there anything else?
Okay, I was thinking, and we can do this or not, Bill Clinton was basically impeached for lying about one or more blowjobs, right?
It was sketchy, in my opinion.
All right, so so I was thinking, impeached for lying about blowjobs, or he thought he could get away with it, I think, half because he didn't know there was a dress with jizz on it. And B, he was thinking, well, is a blowjob really sex? I'm sure that he helped justify, And then Trump has been impeached, whether or not you believe it, we don't have to argue about that, for shaking down a foreign country for personal benefit. That was the issue. And when you compare the number of people in office the number of people in general who've done that versus the number of people who've lied about a blowjob, either getting one or giving one, I'd say at least 12 million Americans have lied about a blowjob, either by omission or, whatever. And then I realized, even myself, I'm a pretty monogamous, straight-shooting guy. 25 years ago, I lied by omission about getting a simulated blowjob.
I think you're inoculated. I think, you've sort of explained it, and people will accept your explanation. So.
Yeah, I picked up my wife at the airport, and we went to Dinah's near LAX for an apple pancake. They make excellent apple pancakes. They've been in business for like 50 years. And they know what they're doing. The pancakes used to be bigger. They used to flop off the plate. And they're a little, but anyway. And then it takes like 25 minutes for them to make the pancake. And there was an old issue of USA Today sitting around, and Carol, while she was waiting, picked up a section of USA Today that announced that the results of a major new sex study had come out, survey, and that 1/3 of people in married relationships had cheated. And she reads this and she looks over at me, and I'm sweaty. And she goes, "What?" And I'm like, "Oh, I just went on this modeling audition, and it was sketchier than I thought." And I said, there was and I glossed over everything. She was plenty pissed anyway, but yeah. But anyway, try the apple pancakes at Dinah's on Sepulveda.
All right.